Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. May I invite you to please take your seats? We're going to start immediately. Once again, good evening, everyone. My name is Marcelo Soares, and on behalf of Mediphacos, I would like to give you a warm welcome to tonight's event. The Keraring user meeting has been going on for the last 20 years during the ESCRS, and it has been an opportunity to update ourselves about the treatment of keratoconus with particular emphasis on the implantation of intrastromal corneal rings. But much more than that, it's been an opportunity to bring together people who are truly interested in this fantastic technology and very challenging field. That's why we feel so honored to have you with us here tonight. And before we start, I would like to acknowledge our panel and our speakers this evening. So we will start by having Dr. Tiago Monteiro from Portugal. Thank you very much, Dr. Tiago, for being with us. There he is. Yeah, okay. Dr. Adriana Smoradkova from Slovakia. Dr. Olivier Prizan from France. Dr. Shadi Awad from Lebanon. And Dr. Juan Arbales from Oman. I also would like to acknowledge and give a special thanks to tonight's moderators, Renato Ambrosio from Brazil, Efekan Koskun7 from Turkey, and Francisco Sanchez from Mexico. So thank you all for being with us. Before we start, I would like to invite to the stage my colleague, Leonardo Paolucci, for a brief message. Once again, welcome.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Leonardo Paolucci. I am CEO of Mediphacos. Throughout my journey, I have been searching for the best way to unite remarkable experience, expertise, and cutting-edge solutions, employing technology not for our own sake, but to provide the best possible results for every single patient who entrusts us their vision. That has been my mission, and tonight I want to share with you how we are building something bigger than technology. We are building a community, a movement, and a shared journey with you, the doctors who change lives every single day. Here's the Keraring Planner. It's not just a tool. It is a next step to how we plan, communicate, and collaborate in Keraring surgery. It is about the transforming surgical planning into something faster, safer, and smarter. In the past, we exchanged emails and PDFs. Now, everything takes place inside a seamless clinical workflow. You can request a personalized surgical plan, follow its progress in the real time, ask for a modification, and even speak directly with our planning specialists, all in one place across iOS, Android, or web. And most importantly, the system is designed with one purpose: to eliminate mistakes and increase precision. No overlapping rings, no mismatches. Everything is consistent, structured, and secure. Since the official launch in December 24, over 1,000 doctors in 45 countries have already received the plans using the Keraring Planner. This is not a local experiment. It is a global movement. Every day, doctors from every continent are working with us, building the future together. What sets this apart is not just the technology, but network. The planner is designed to support you, never to replace you. It uses data, analytics, and soon artificial intelligence, but always keeping the human decision at the center. This is about empowering your expertise with the most advanced tools available. We are now integrating AI agent specialized in Keraring. The goal is not to blindly automate, but to deliver great consistency, reliability, and above all, to learn with outcomes. For too long, post-operative data has been lost. We believe it is time to change this. By collecting, analyzing results, together we can unlock insights that will redefine keratoconus treatment worldwide. Platform. When I think about the future, I look at platforms like Spotify, Strava, and Instagram. They collect the data, give us feedbacks, and help us improve every day. Imagine what's possible when every doctor has access to their own practice analytics, their own year in review, and the change to share insights with colleagues globally. This is not a dream. This is the future we are building together. This is more than an app. This is about connecting doctors across the globe by sharing cases, results, and experience. We are creating the true knowledge network that pushes the boundaries of what's possible for keratoconus. This is our shared journey to unite as a worldwide community, to share knowledge and give our patient the gift to better vision and with it the better life. And tonight you can try it for yourself. Here is a QR code where you can experience our AI agent specialized in Keraring. You can ask questions and see how it responds. This is just the beginning, but shows the power of what we can achieve when we combine your experience with intelligent, data-driven support. Ladies and gentlemen, we are not just launching an app. We are launching a new way of working together, a way that brings clarity, safety, and innovation, not only for us, but for the millions of patients who depend on us. Together, we can shape the future of keratoconus treatment. Together, we are stronger. Together, we are the Keraring global community. Thank you, and let's celebrate this moment.
Hello, good evening. First, I want to say I met with Keraring 20 years ago. And after that, about keratoconus, life started for me. And I earned a lot of things. Like today, in my business, maybe 35% it's from keratoconus. I earn money. I got very good position in my career. But I understand today that was the most important thing. I got very good friends. Thank you very much. And now I want to start with Diego Monteiro, long-term results of intracorneal ring segments implantation in pediatric patients. Please.
So good afternoon. It's working. Okay, maybe that. I wonder if you can put my slides. First of all, let me thank the company in Marcelo and Ricardo, which is one of the coordinators and one of the distributors in Portugal. And we have to acknowledge the great service that has been done by the company to the community, to the doctors, especially the new doctors in training. And this is very important. It's just not about selling implants, it's about supporting doctors. And we have just seen how the new app could really improve our workflow, especially in people who are starting. So since we are in a users meeting, I chose not a controversial topic, but something that we can discuss about later on, because you are always seeing classic results of intracorneal ring segments in adults. There's a lot of controversy in doing it in pediatric patients. And what I'm here today, more than to teach you, I'm here to open a kind of discussion between people who are really using this technology and have a lot of experience. So these are the main indications for intracorneal ring segments. So especially we are using them on keratoconus patients. And which keratoconus patient? Well, patients who have poor visual acuity with spectacles, patients who have good visual acuity with contact lenses but have a lot of intolerance to the contact lens. And as in the refractive surgery field, we are looking at a lot of dry eye, severe dry eye. So contact lens intolerance is a problem. And of course, we have good visual acuity with spectacles, but the patient could have a high anisometropia. And so this patient cannot wear the full correction to have a good corrected visual acuity. Then we have other forms of ectasia, other forms of irregular astigmatism. We also use it on post-PK or DALK patients, but keratoconus, I must say, is like about 95% of our indications. When we think about pediatric patients, and not just for the intracorneal ring segments, for any kind of treatment that you do, either monitor, either cross-linking, either a keratoplasty, either an intracorneal ring segments, we need to take into consideration there are several variables that can influence the long-term stability of any kind of surgical procedure. And we must not forget that medical treatment, so to treat the disease, treat the allergies, avoid the eye rubbing, is crucial to avoid having the patient to progress. And there's a lot of papers in pediatric patients showing that controlling the disease, the allergy, you are able to stabilize more than half of the patients without having to do a cross-linking. So this is something we have to bear in mind. Second, of course, do a correct indication of the procedure and choose the adequate implant to the specific ectasia phenotype we are treating. A precise surgical technique, of course. It's preferable to do a femtosecond laser, no doubt about that. Publications are evident, although all of us have a lot of experience with manual surgery, and once we have passed our learning curve, we can have a decent rate of complications. And at last, I want to discuss the biocompatibility of the PMMA implant, because I think that in the last 2 years, maybe PMMA has been a devil in the circus, and I don't think PMMA is not that bad for the cornea. So you know that I work in very close collaboration with Instituto Fernández Vega in Spain, and I think that classifying the disease in the morphology help us to achieve a good regression of the disease, so a good short-term results. We want to have a therapeutic effect, but we also want to have a refractive effect. So we are not just treating topographies, we are treating patients. We need to increase visual acuity. So people who we implant rings are not people who have 20/25 or 20/20 corrected visual acuity. They have low visual acuity, they need to regain visual acuity, and we only can do that if we standardize the disease, and there's a lot of protocols that we can do. Even inside the Mediphacos nomogram, you can have access to all of this information. So pediatric keratoconus, we need to reduce the impact of the disease on the patient. And as you will see later on, there are two types of pediatric keratoconus. We need to obtain good visual acuity. We may slow or even delay the progression of the disease, but most of all, we want to avoid doing a DALC or a PK on a very young patient. So when we address a pediatric patient or even an adult patient, we need to look about therapeutic, so we need to try to treat the disease, but we are treating patients, so we need to recover binocular visual acuity. So we need to do some kind of refractive approach. And this is why people who are using cross-linking treatment in stage 1 or stage 2, they try to give a little bit of a refractive approach, doing a PTK to take out epithelium, associating any kind of refractive procedure with excimer laser. There are a lot of protocols. In my school, I was taught to use intracorneal ring segments in order to achieve this. So my next slides are going to be about a cohort of patients, younger than 18 years old, with bad visual acuity. So these are not young patients that were early diagnosed, that had good visual acuity. So these were patients who had very bad visual acuity, and those patients we implanted intracorneal ring segments to increase visual acuity and then monitor. And those are the ones that I'm going to talk about. These are 45 patients, 45 eyes, mean age is around 15 years old. So at 6 months, at 1 month, we obtain clinical regression. So we improve uncorrected and corrected visual acuity, and we also improve the topographic parameters on the cornea. Well, good. That's what we normally achieve with intracorneal ring segments in adults. So what we want is to induce a disease regression, but what about progression? So these are not adult, these are very young patients. So what we need to observe is that if the procedure is stable over time. I'm not saying the disease has been stabilized by the ring, I'm saying the procedure I've done which improved vision, I want to know if this procedure is stable, right? So we can assume a lot of success criteria or failed criteria. And working in collaboration with Professor José Alfonso, we chose three criteria to describe instability. And more or less, this criteria could be used after cross-linking or other treatments. So an increase in the Ks on the cornea, in the steep K, an increase in topographic seal, or losing lines of visual acuity. So whenever nothing of this happened, we classify as success, full success. If one of these criteria were to become worse, but still better than before surgery, we talk about qualified success or partial, and failure if one of these criteria fails and becomes worse than the pre-op of the patient, right? So these are the results of 12 months. So you can see that 89% of patients have qualified as a success. 11% had a failure, you have there. 4 eyes losing 2 lines of vision, 2 eyes an increase of 1.5 in the topographic seal, 10 eyes with an increase of Kmax, although from these 10 eyes, only one lost lines of corrected distance visual acuity. At 5 years, the rate is more or less the same, so we obtain 85% of patients maintaining success or partial success, and only 15% of patients, pediatric patients, losing lines of vision or having to do a secondary procedure, right? Like a DALC or a cross-linking. Let's look at the 6 eyes that were classified as failure. From my evaluation, I have 3 of these eyes, I made an incorrect implant. Some of these eyes were treated before we had long arc, okay? These were advanced keratoconus, where if we had longer arcs, higher than 300, probably we would have obtained a better outcome. One of the eyes was a bad indication after all, So it was a grade 4 with very high case. Probably this eye would go for a KERS today, if I had at that time. And 2 eyes, I probably, looking backwards, I would have done cross-linking on them because, as you can see, they had pretty much good visual acuity corrected before surgery. If we look at the same study in a different population, this is from Instituto Fernandes Vega, and these patients were operated with femtosecond laser. Sorry, mine were done in a public institution with manual surgery. You can see that I'm going to run through the follow-up, at 10 years, they have 91% succeeding in maintaining good outcomes, good visual outcomes with stable visual acuities, topographic and refractive astigmatism. So I must say that, of course, we all know that intercorneal ring segments, they induce a clinical regression, and so we can use them if patients come with low visual acuity. But if we can treat all the medical allergy, if we do a correct indication, a correct surgery, I think that we can improve a lot of these patients, and maybe 10–15% we can do an extra procedure like cross-linking if we see that there is some progression after surgery. And this was more or less what I wanted to tell you. Thank you very much.
After each presentation, we would like to have questions or comments. Yes.
None. No, none. The question was, how many patients of our study were Down syndrome, and none of those patients were Down syndrome.
Did you use topical anesthesia or?
No, all of those patients are done under general anesthesia, so I would say 100% of them. More for the comfort of the patient, more of the surgeon. But I think for a child to be on a topical impossible, but on a sedation, very hard. On femtosecond laser, we do topical and a little bit of sedation with manual, because these are from an institution where I don't have femtosecond laser. We do general anesthesia.
All cases were manual.
All cases of my cohort were manual. Right.
And Francisco?
I just want to share with you a very brief comment. In February 2003, my friend Jaime Ortiz, who is in the back, another friend, Ramon Naranjo, and myself, we tried for the very first time the use of the femtosecond laser to implant corneal rings. So the very first patient that we implanted at that time was a girl, 8-year-old girl. So maybe she's the longest patient, and I've been the longest follow-up, and I've been following this patient for 22 years. And it's quite stable, and I can recall the case very good because she is the daughter of the nurse of the gynecologist of my wife. So that's why I recall the patient. So she's quite stable 22 years after. So I agree with Diego. Maybe if the patient doesn't rub the eyes or has some allergies, don't you agree that the Kerarings will last in 2 or 3 decades after the implantation?
Our nomogram now and some years before is, we don't cross-link every patient, every pediatric patient, first of all. If you see a lot of meta-analysis published, more than half of patients, if you are able to treat with the pediatricians, with the allergologic doctors, a lot of them, they are really stable. So my first message is don't rush to do any kind of surgery. Then it's different what type of patient you receive, because in our institution, we normally, unfortunately, we receive the patients too late. So I see young kids with 0.2, 0.3, they cannot tolerate vision. They will not wear a rigid contact lens very young. So we need to get some functional visual acuity. So it's not always the paradise. So of course I wanted to treat everyone with cross-linking with 20/20 or 20/25 at diagnosis, but on the reality, we see patients who struggle with vision. So for me, I think it's better to regularize the cornea, follow them regularly, and put the family all together so they don't, we really cannot lose their follow-up, and then of course do any kind of cross-linking and all the things you can. And I have to say one more thing. I know that these are patients from Portugal, and I know that in other regions, in the Middle East, even in Brazil, South America, in Turkey, probably you have more aggressive disease, and probably you have to combine treatments on the same day. I acknowledge that, and for us, I think we manage this doing sequentially if we need.
I want to add, can you hear me? I want to add something in that regards. I have the opportunity to have all my practice in the Middle East, and I have seen catastrophic cases of many years ago when I started my practice, and the protocol was just to follow and document progression before cross-linking. And I have kids that they came after a year because they didn't follow my schedule of 3 months follow-ups or 6 months follow-ups, or some of them after 2 or 3 years, just ready for a corneal transplant because there was nothing to do. So also it's very important what he mentioned, that in some regions the disease is even more aggressive, and we don't need to give the opportunity for the disease to affect the vision to treat it. We have seen studies in Saudi Arabia where almost 8 out of 10 patients show progression of the disease in the pediatric population. So my way to go, of course, I try to regularize the vision. I try to implant the rings as soon as possible. We have seen also that the rings itself stabilize a little bit the keratoconus, maybe for the redistribution of the collagen fibers, and because the patients already had a surgery, so they are afraid to touch the eyes. But I also cross-linked them 6 months after the surgery, and I think it's very important. It's that you don't have a diabetic patient and you wait until the diabetic patients start to show signs of renal failure or signs of the disease to treat it. You should treat it as soon as you identify it, especially in that high-risk population that is the pediatric population.
Juan, I highly agree with you, but you don't get you get a great example. My wife is here, and she hates my metaphors, but I love them. So I keep using them because I think it's the point. You don't get a diabetic patient, you do a pan photo in the first visit because they have a chance for getting blind. So you need to be keen on understanding prognosis. And prognosis is a word that means trying to see what is coming. You don't have a crystal ball, but you can get data from the patient that would anticipate prognosis. And eventually, I have seen cases like you that they lost the follow-up and they come back much worse, and we lost an opportunity. And it's very painful for us as doctors to see that happening. But probably worse than that is to cross-link someone that doesn't need a cross-link, and then you have a progressive flattening, and then you are causing more harm. So it's always a balance between waiting too much or being too soon. And prognosis is a factor. And if you understand that eye rubbing aggravates keratoconus, but may cause ectasia, you understand when you should understand when is a true high chances of progression kid, and for that you need multimodal. And now you ask, okay, beautiful. How we do that? Multimodal. We don't have a crystal ball, we don't have a magic bullet number, but very low biomechanics, very thin cornea, family history, all this data can help us. And eventually in certain regions, as you said, you have likely chances of having more kids that you need to cross-link as soon as possible. But we have to be very careful with the message. And we just finished the second consensus that we all agree that eye rubbing is very bad, but we should all agree that eye rubbing is much worse for some, and eventually some people can rub the eye and never have any ectasia because they have thick, strong corneas. And we need to understand that so that we can pass this word forward, because all of you are here, you are leaders in your regions, you are top doctors. But if you come with the message that we have to cross-link everyone, we will do pan photo in every patient with diabetes, and eventually it will cause more harm than benefit.
Okay. We have to continue. Adriana Smrodkova. Active keratoconus screening in families with positive history.
Okay. I stay here because my vision is a little bit worse. Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I prepare a presentation about active keratoconus screening in families with positive history in our clinic. Okay. The etiology of keratoconus is still not fully understood. However, many studies have identified several risk factors, including environmental, genetic, biomechanical, chronic eye inflammation, ethnicity, and hereditary predisposition. Keratoconus is associated with more than 50 ocular and extraocular genetic diseases. Family history of keratoconus has been reported as a risk factor in many studies. Keratoconus prevalence varies across countries with different ethnics. As you can see, lower rates have been reported in Caucasians and higher rates in Asians, particularly in the Middle East. The patients with a family history of keratoconus are at the higher risk of developing keratoconus. Studies indicate that the prevalence of keratoconus in the first-degree relatives can range from 2 to 28%. Keratoconus in our clinic. We have more than 2,500 patients with keratoconus. We started Keraring implantation in 2011 using manual technique. We used the femtosecond Visumax 500 from 2013 to 2022, that has been replaced by Visumax 800. Here you can see the last step of operation. Now I open the tunnel completely with a dissector.
You always do that? You do the femto?
Yes, because the femto 802 and 502 make a little bit bridge, yes. And now I inserted a ring into the tunnel and push to the final position. We have performed more than 1,200 Keraring implantation during 14 years, but only 20 cross-linking. We implant all models of Kerarings. And now, the prevalence of keratoconus in Slovakia is very low. Slovakia is a small country in Central Europe with continental climate. The population exceeding 5 million people and ethnicity composed predominantly Caucasians, specifically Slovaks. We perform active keratoconus screening. Corneal topography is part of every examination, and we also do corneal topography in the first-degree relatives of patients with keratoconus. We found 43 families with 93 members. The average age was 38 years, and only 10 patients were younger than 20 years. In this group of patients, we performed Keraring implantation 64 times, keratoplasty 6 times, and cross-linking 6 times. A positive family history of keratoconus is reported in 3.36% of cases in our clinic. I prepare some cases. Family 1. 32-year-old man, he was diagnosed with keratoconus at age 25. He wore glasses from age 5. We implanted Kerarings in both eyes. In the right eye, one symmetric segment, 210, and in the left eye, 2 asymmetric segments. Before implantation, his uncorrected visual acuity in the both eyes was 0.05, and the corrected vision was 0.6. And 3 years after implantation, his uncorrected vision was 0.4 and 0.15, and corrected vision 0.7 and 1.0. He told us that his brother had keratoconus, and we invited him for an examination. His brother, 33-year-old man, was diagnosed with keratoconus at age 24, glasses from age 4. We implanted Kerarings in both eyes, asymmetric segments. Before implantation, his uncorrected vision in both eyes was 0.05, and the corrected vision was 0.8 and 0.7. And 3 years after implantation, his uncorrected vision was 0.3, and corrected vision in both eyes was 0.9. Both brothers preferred to wear soft contact lenses. We invited their parents for an examination. Only the mother came, and she showed no evidence of keratoconus. Their father came in our clinic 1 year after his son's surgery, and he thought that he had keratoconus. And the examination revealed not only keratoconus, but also decompensated arterial hypertension, which had caused branch retinal vein occlusion in the right eye. And we also diagnosed the best disease in the left eye. The first initial treatment focused on stabilization of arterial hypertension, and then, after stabilization, Keraring implantation was performed in the left eye. Before implantation, his visual acuity was 0.3 and corrected vision was 0.8, and we implanted one symmetric segment into a 6 mm zone. And 2 years after implantation, his uncorrected vision was 0.6 and 1.0. And here you can see a similar corneal topography of these 3 family members. And family 2, young boy, a 14-year-old boy, glasses from age 4. He was diagnosed, he was monitored for amblyopia on the right eye. We implanted Kerarings in both eyes. And here you can see the last vision. Before implantation, his uncorrected visual acuity was 0.05 and 0.5. And now corrected vision is, okay, after 5 years after operation, uncorrected vision is 0.5 and 0.9, and the best corrected vision is 0.7 and 1.0. During his examination, he was accompanied with their parents and younger brother, and we did corneal topography to his brother, and he was diagnosed with keratoconus too. Okay, younger brother, 12-year-old boy. He wore glasses only for 1 year, and he was monitored for amblyopia too. Again, we implanted Kerarings in both eyes. Before implantation, his vision was 0.4 and 0.5, and 5 years after operation, his uncorrected vision was 0.7 and corrected vision was 0.9. And this young brother doesn't need glasses. And here you can see the comparison of brothers' corneal topography. In conclusion, genetic predisposition plays a significant role in the etiology of keratoconus. Active keratoconus screening in families with a positive history is crucial for early diagnosis and treatment. And proper management of keratoconus can significantly delay progression and improve outcomes, which contribute to a better quality of life for our patients. And here are my young patients after surgery in 2019, and 5 years later when they were planning to study at university with very good vision and stabilized keratoconus. Thank you for your attention.
We have very limited time. Only one question we can have. Do you have a question? Yes, Francisco.
Okay, please.
Well, it's a privilege in this, during this session to have the experts of screening, like Renato, like Shadi. And what opinion deserves for you when you have a relative, the nephew, for example, of a patient with keratoconus that comes to your office requesting for a LASIK procedure or any refractive procedure, even that during the screening you observe that topography, tomography, elasticity, all the data are normal. Do you perform LASIK in this patient?
Absolutely, yes. I think screening is very important. We did a study in yeah. Not a twin brother. If there's a brother, if it's a brother, I do it. If my judgment, if I say let's change a little bit. Let's agree that we need to make sure that the patient doesn't have a family history of keratoconus so that we can do safe LASIK. If we agree on that, we only can do LASIK if you know all the family members of that patient.
Okay, I understand.
But that's what you're trying to save. Your sake of mind, you're trying to put like a blind sheet here so don't you... I think if you do measure the patient and judge that the patient is fine for LASIK, and I use family history as part of my protocol, but I don't take it as the most important thing, because some people would say, if you have a family history of keratoconus, you cannot do any PRK. I would say, depending on the corneal biomechanics, tomography, epithelial thickness, multimodal data, if that's fine, I think it's okay to do it. But maybe exploring the great talk that we just listened, the rationale of screening is doing a very non-invasive test that's inexpensive, that you find people that you need to do more tests, sometimes more expensive, eventually more invasive. Screening a population for keratoconus is very important, especially in the areas that you have a likely higher prevalence of keratoconus, like the Middle East. So we will be able to prevent visual loss, telling people not to rub the eye. Tell everybody not to rub the eye, it's a great message. But if you find populations that you need more follow-up, eventually early cross-linking, that is what we want. We don't want to over-treat nor under-treat patients that can benefit from laser vision correction as an elective procedure.
If I have a keratoconus patient, I invite their child, their brothers, sisters, and I follow them free. And I found another patients from their family. Now we have to continue. I would like to invite Shadi Award, FAMTO Cares for Keratoconus, and we will discuss. I suppose. Oh no, this is. If I can. This is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Hello, everybody. Just waiting for the slides to welcome you. First, I would like to thank Marcelo for his very nice invitation. And I would like to say that when I first started my first Keraring and Intax, because I used to do both, Marcelo was the one that taught me on the booth how to handle, how to use the Keraring forceps and how to tilt it. And actually, this tip has been with me even when I use CARES, and I teach it to all my fellows and my residents how to do it. So thank you, Marcelo. So again, it's an honor to be here. What I'm going to do in 10 minutes is just quickly go over what's happening in KS over the past 7 or 8 years and give you an idea where we're going. And I'm actually very moderate and very objective, and I'm going to show you our objective data for you to see. And I think you're the best crew to understand because you've had such a great experience with ring segments, so you would understand what I'm saying and where I think this technology is going. So first, cases were introduced by Susan Jacob. First case performed in 2015. She published it in 2018 in the Journal of Refractive Surgery. At the time, her publication was combined with cross-linking. So this is the first publication which was combined same day with cross-linking. What are the characteristics of KS? If you take a close look at the cross-section, this is femtocase cut with a femtosecond and inserted with a femtosecond, you would notice it is allogenic. So in theory, it's not no melt. I'll tell you why. There is melt, there is a possibility, but it has, in theory, less possibility of melt because it's allogenic, so the nutrients go in, especially when implanted shallower in the cornea. Because of that, you can implant it shallower and kind of get some advantages of the stronger fibers anteriorly in the cornea. That's why you could go to a depth of 250. And because the index of refraction is very close to the native host cornea, you can implant it at a smaller optical zone, as close as 4.5 millimeter, with almost no or minimal glare and halos. I've yet to see one patient of mine complaining of that, even though I go sometimes up to 4.5. Since 2019, I have almost about 400 cases done already. So these are the characteristics of this segment. This is the segment implanted in the cornea using the femtosecond cutting and using femtosecond as insertion. As you can see, very nice the way it goes in the cornea. Now, segment preparation. The segment preparation can be self-cut or pre-cut. This is using the Jacobs refine, the first time it was published, with a double-bladed refine where you can cut it, cut a corneal donor and cut it in the middle. You can get the worst cornea ever. You don't need to care about endothelial cells or whatever. Of course, we debride endothelium and epithelium. Then you proceed, this is with a Zimmer Z8 as a regular insertion. And just we make sure that there are no bridges because these segments are floppy. I developed a technique called the dehydration technique where you see the segment behave like a synthetic segment, because otherwise for me it's pretty hard to get a piece of noodle inside a tight tunnel. Otherwise you're going to have to produce very large tunnel, and this is kind of, a step back because then they can migrate and all. So I kept them dehydrated. This is the what cares mold. I use it with a heat source to dehydrate them fast in 5 minutes, and you insert them just like synthetic segments. And this, for me, was a major game changer when I started using this technique. So you can prepare the segment yourself. You can also use the femtosecond laser to prepare the segments, or you can use a custom software. I developed a custom software with Zimmer a long time ago. Now it was officially launched in ESCRS as a standalone software. It's available now to be used if you have this option with the Zimmer platform. At the time, we had to use an artificial chamber, and this was the very first segment cut with the femtosecond, not with a blade. So basically, you dock, you design with the rings, the arc length, everything. You have OCT guidance, and then you perform the first and the second cut. And as you can see, this is the second segment, and then you can peel them easily, as you see here. So this is the software that now is available right now at the Zimmer platform, and you can decide about asymmetrical segment, thickness, and everything based on that, on arc length. And by the way, the first publication we did in GRS was asymmetrical segment, and I basically used the Keraring same concept of going to 5350. So I went at the time for 500 to 800 to treat certain morphologies, certain phenotypes of keratoconus. And finally, you can have them pre-cut. Pre-cut, you have several options. Basically, you have the mechanically cut with the Vision Gift, KeraNatural, or you have the femto-cut using the Z8 as well, the LED Z8. It's either Cornea Gen doing CTAX in the US, or you have the Lions Word Vision Institute, which gets them as OptiGrab. These are irradiated, and they can sterilize, and they can stay on the shelf for 2 years. So there's some advantage with that. I'm not going to go over the details, but this is the details of each between KeraNatural, KoreaGen, and the World Vision. World Vision iBank is the only iBank that does asymmetrical segments as well. So they have kind of some customization. The other two, KeraNatural and KoreaGen, they don't have any form of real customization. The nomogram really depend on what you're using. You have the Istanbul nomogram by Alin Çelik. You have the David Gunn's nomogram if it's femto-cut. You have the KoreaGen nomogram. It's kind of a black box there. And you have our nomogram, which was published back then using mechanical and femtosecond trifrination. Okay. So the insertion technique can be hydrated, the usual hydrated technique. You can use them dehydrated. Or you could use them, you can cross-link them before, either using high-frequency cross-linking, which solidify the segment. This is the technique of Farad Hafezi, or using just regular cross-linking, which is good, but they still are not that safe. That was published by Cosimo Mazzota. My technique of dehydration, that was published, the newer technique in Korea about a few months ago, has this coffee mug warmer, which you can get on Amazon for $5. You put this mold, Epsilon Awad case mold, where it's titanium. It's all sterilized, so you can get the heat all through. You can get them in 5 minutes. They're very stiff, and you can insert them just like Keraring and synthetic segments. How about the results? So basically, there are many papers out there. I'm going to guide you to how to go over them. This is our paper, which was actually still is the biggest in terms of looking at everything: segmental tomography, epithelium, stroma, OCT sections, what happened with the segments over time, do they lose thickness or not? Everything is included in this paper, including the first nomogram. And as you can see here, you have a really great improvement in CDVA, about 81% improved 2 lines or more. You have a lot of improvement in UDVA and CDVA. Kmax decreases by about 5 diopters, whereas the K-mean decreases about 3.5 diopters. This is overall. This is all done, by the way, using single segments here, so to give you an idea. And because we were treating just one type of keratoconus to kind of make sure there's no confounding factors. And coma decreases about 0.9 diopters. Now, we looked at epithelium. We did a machine learning algorithm to compute all the epithelium inside the rings and at the cone. And then we looked at how the stroma changes. So the stroma using OCT, we looked at the stroma without the epithelium. We saw that the stroma decreases by within 1 week and then stabilizes, whereas the epithelium keeps changing up to a month and then stabilizes. So we have published also the technique using femto cutting in Korea, and there's also Al Saad who published very similar findings both in femto and mechanical cutting. Interestingly, both are the same as mechanical cutting. And there's this publication for the team of Gerd Alfred in AGO, which goes as a meta-analysis, goes over all the publications, including ours and many others, different techniques, different types of hydration, dehydration, whether crossing was with them or not. So I like this publication. And customized case, we have our publication using femto and Susan's publication exactly the same month in 2023 in December, showing how you can customize the segments, whether femto or mechanical. If you want to look at what happens topographically, this is the tangential map before and after. You can see a major improvement again in regularization. But if you want to dissect to understand what's going on, and you want to take a look at the stromal elevation, this is a few days later, major decrease in the stromal elevation without taking into account the epithelium. If you look at the epithelium in 3 days, the epithelium hasn't budged at all, so it's the same. But if you take a look at the epithelium 1 month out, you see a whopping increase in the epithelium next to the segment and all the way decreasing to the center. Interestingly, by the way, at 3 to 4 days, you see decrease in the epithelial thickness at the cone. So again, you can see that in OCT. So if you look here, the epithelium decreases at the cone, and usually if the cone flattens, we expect epithelium to thicken, not decrease. But what happens right after, within 1 month, the epithelium increases again. And for me, this is responsible for this honeymoon period, which you see first happening, wow, that's a major improvement. Then 1 month, there is some regression, there is some improvement again at 3 months. I'm sure some of you are nodding and saying that's what we notice in the Keraring as well. You're going to see in the next publication what we're doing. And if you look again, you see that the epithelium is getting 36, then 44, then 43. But what happens to the stroma? I used to think there's a stromal change, and actually there's no stromal change. You see the stroma keeps being 15, 11, 12. So this is not a structural regression. It's only the fact of the epithelium giving you a really, I don't know why it's lagging. Okay. honeymoon period first and then regressing a little bit, then improving a little bit more. Complication includes tunnel roof tear, which because it's a 250, it's thin transient epithelial erosions, tunnel roof melt. We've published 2 cases till now of melt. Yes, melt is possible, especially if you go very thin. That's why we don't go below 250, and now I even go to 300. And you cannot just assume if you have A to B that you can do it. Oh, you cannot go for synthetic, but you can go. These segments can still melt, so it's not something it's impossible. So we published it in cornea, the first one, and in JCRS in the second one. So are we ready to transition from corneal ring segments to KERS? So we have published the only study comparing both, okay? That's the only study. And at the time, I published it with Intax because I've been doing Kerarings a long time before. Then both Keraring and Intax, then I shifted to Intax. And because I wanted to use the MS39 and have equal opportunity for both to be evaluated, I chose to look at Intax. And we did a technology which is not very used in ophthalmology, but used in medicine, which is propensity metric scoring. I've done a lot of cases of Intax SK and not as much in KERS. So what we did, this is again a machine learning algorithm that will match based on some criteria like age, corneal thickness, Kmax, Kmean, and so many others. You can give some intervals, brackets, and let the algorithm pick. You don't have a lot to pick from the KERS, but you have a lot to pick from the Intax SK. And then it does one-to-one matching. So that's why we match oranges to oranges. Now, we cannot pick very advanced keratoconus because we cannot put Kerarings in very thin corneas. We have to put deep. We cannot put them at 4.5 millimeter optical zone. So the only bias here is we chose mild to moderate keratoconus and not very advanced keratoconus. So we have published it in the Journal of Refractive Surgery. If you take a look, there's just a minimal improvement in CDVA in the case better than the Keraring, but not really majorly statistically significant. It was almost the same. If you look at cylinder, at sphere, spherical equivalent, they're all the same. And if you look at keratometric readings, Kmax, Kmean, they are the same all over if you see even the stability. If you look at the epithelium, that's why I said probably, the stromal epithelial remodeling and the total remodeling, they're exactly the same. This is Intax SK, and look at KS, they're almost exactly the same. Again, using the same condition and everything the same. So what do really KS bring to the table? Let's be honest, what do they care? What do they bring? For me, at least, they can go in cases where PMMA segments don't dare to go. And that is whenever you have very thin cornea, post-PRK or LASIK ectasia. It's very thin. You don't want to put a Keraring shallow in the cornea. You have very advanced keratoconus. You want to put them in 4.5 millimeter optical zone. You don't want to go that small. You're afraid of glare or so. So in certain conditions where, a patient is stable, but maybe you're afraid of melt, whereby maybe here you have a less possibility of melt. So definitely there are cases where, it would be great to put them. For the surgeons who's already very happy with Kerarings or synthetic segments, I would say continue. I just shifted 2021 because I felt that if I want to keep pushing the research, I have to stick to one technique. And because I got equal results to what I used to get in Intax SK, I said it's time to shift, and I can keep developing this technique and give it better to my patient. But I think for the surgeon who's already very happy doing great results, it would be great to add it on their armamentarium. This way it will serve our patients best. Thank you.
I think we should continue after Oliver. We can discuss because it's almost the same subject. Oliver present long-term results of intracorneal ring segments implantation in 1,500 eyes. So thank you very much, Marcello, for your kind invitation. It's a pleasure for me to be here, like every year, and with such a panel and such an audience. So I'm going to present a personal study, retrospective, on a very large cohort. So just a few words on intracorneal ring segments that are PMMA segments introduced in the corneal stroma to reshape the cornea, to improve best corrected visual acuity, to reduce ametropia. They induce a specific flattening pattern that can be visualized using keratometric differential maps. So each ring induces a specific pattern, which means that for a specific keratoconus, choosing the right ring means choosing the best flattening pattern that will reduce the corneal deformation. This flattening pattern depends on two ring parameters, mainly the arc length and the thickness. So in Paris, at Clinique de la Vision, since 2007, we have very high experience in keratoconic eyes, about 2,500 eyes. This is roughly all the surgeries that we have performed. And regarding rings, I have inserted more than 1,500 rings, all Keraring. Most of them were 5 millimeter. So the interest of presenting this study, there are two things that I would underline. The first thing is that such a large cohort allows to stratify by ring parameters in order to define the outcomes, the refractive and keratometric outcomes, as a function of ring parameters. The second point is to check for complications, because like Shadi has presented, KERS is it's emergent technique that is, in my opinion, very interesting. But most of the KERS paper rely, of course, on the results and the technique, which is very interesting, but also on PMMA intolerance. So PMMA intolerance is a true fact when you consider intacs, because we have some publications that mention up to 35% of explantation. But it's not really true regarding Keraring, and this is what I want to show on this retrospective study on a very large cohort. So these 2 points we're going to share tonight. So the first point is trying to evaluate the effect of ring parameters on refractive and keratometric outcomes. So this is a retrospective study since 2007 at Clinique de la Vision. The surgical technique includes marking of the horizontal axis on sitting position, the visual axis using Purkinje reflex, creation of the tunnel using intralace at 75% depth of the local pachymetry, and of course ring insertion following the treatment plan. This is the repartition of the follow-up. And most of these eyes had another surgery a few months later using Athens protocol, topo-guided laser. As we wanted to check only the effect of the rings, we chose to compare results between pre-op and 3 months, not later, not to interfere with other surgeries. And we stratified in 7 arc length groups and 4 thickness groups. So this is the distribution of the rings regarding arc length. In purple, you have the regular rings. In orange, these are the asymmetrical rings. Most of the rings were 160-degree arc length, and this is the stratification, the repartition by thickness, showing that most of the rings were 250 microns. So now let's look at the results. Regarding the flattening effect, the variation of Kmax, altogether we had nearly 5 diopters of flattening, but when you stratify by arc length, you can see that the highest flattening effect is with circular rings or with long arc length, as opposite to short arc length. And when you look at the 160-degree group and you then stratify by thickness, you find that the highest flattening effect occurs with the thickest ring, which is quite logical, but this is now proven with this study. And also the same for asymmetrical rings. You have a higher flattening effect when you have 200, 300 as compared to 150, 250 asymmetrical rings. We find roughly the same results regarding the reduction in spherical equivalent, correction of myopia. Altogether, we have 2.2 diopters of reduction of spherical equivalent, but you have a higher effect when you have longer arc length, and you have also a higher effect for thicker rings. Regarding toric effect, this is the opposite. Altogether, when you take all into consideration all the rings, we have around a 2 diopters reduction in toricity. But when we stratify with arc length, we have a very high effect, much higher effect for short arc length, 120-degree ring, as compared to circular rings where we have nearly no toric effect. And again, when you take the 160-degree group and you stratify it by thickness, you have a much higher toric effect with thicker rings. So this is, when you summarize the refractive result according to arc length, you have a much higher toric effect regarding when you use short arc length, and a much higher flattening effect and reduction in spherical equivalent when you have a higher arc length group. Now let's talk about best corrected visual acuity. Surprisingly, altogether, we only have a gain of 1 line, which is not very much. And this is the repartition of the gain and loss. We have 55% who gain of eyes who gain 1 or more lines. We have 1/3 of the eyes who didn't gain any lines, and also 15% who lost some lines. When we do this graph, we stratify again by arc length. This is for the regular rings, and this is for the asymmetrical rings. While stratifying by arc length means stratifying by keratoconus phenotype. We can see that the highest gain of best corrected lines occurs for decentered keratoconus, and the lowest gain of lines, best corrected lines, occurs with central or paracentral keratoconus, with a significant difference, suggesting that the phenotype may be an interesting prognostic factor, and that namely the decentered keratoconus, like on the left, should have a better prognosis, because when you put a ring, you have the opportunity to recenter the ring, the cone, and opportunity to reduce more higher order aberrations than when you have a central cone. When you have a central cone, you can only reduce the cone, but not recenter the cone. So usually we have a higher gain of lines for decentered keratoconus as compared to central or paracentral keratoconus. Another prognostic factor may be related to Kmax. Here we have 2 cases, the same phenotype. It is a snowman phenotype, but I cannot read from here. But on the left side, we have not very much advanced keratoconus with a Kmax of 49, and on the right, you have the same snowman phenotype, but with a more advanced keratoconus with a Kmax of 61. When you see the gain of lines, best corrected lines, in the less advanced, we get more lines than in the advanced case. And we also have a significant negative correlation between post-op BCVA and pre-op Kmax, suggesting that when you have a very advanced Kmax, very advanced keratoconus, you gain less best corrected lines than when you have not a very advanced keratoconus. So this was the first part of the topic, the effect, the keratometric and refractive effect as a function of ring parameters. Now let's talk about Keraring complications. So again, this is the same series with more than 1,500 eyes, monocentric, Clinique de la Vision in Paris, with up to 13 years follow-up. This is the distribution of the minimal pachymetry. So this is important because when you consider explantation risk, it's important to consider the pachymetry of the eye. So this is the distribution. You can see that many eyes have below 400. Some of the eyes have below 100. And it is also important to consider that most of these eyes, around 1,000 of these 1,500 eyes, so 2/3 of these eyes, had laser photoablation after the ring, further reducing the thickness above the ring. So theoretically increasing the risk of explantation. So what complications did we get? We got major halos in 20 cases, requiring explantation in 4 eyes, and all of these eyes were either circular rings, either a pair of 2 rings. And again, these were 5 mm ring, not 6 mm. We had 1 case of decentration, 6 cases of decentration requiring repositioning of one of the 2 rings in 1 case. We had 5 cases of infection requiring explantation in 4 cases and ending up with a penetrating keratoplasty in 1 eye. We had 1 case of inflammation requiring explantation. And now the subject that is most important about extrusion. We had 21, extrusion was always often related to the position of the ring too close to the incision. So when this was the case, we tried to reposition the ring and to put it further away from the incision. And this was successful in 11 of these 21 cases, so not requiring explantation. But in 10 cases, this was not successful, and so we had to take away the ring. So this led to 10 cases of explantation. So if we summarize all the cases of explantation, we had on the 1,500 cases, 20 cases of explantation, which is a little bit more than 1%. But it's important to look at the reason. Half of these cases, 10 of these explantation cases, were related to medical complications, infection, halos, decentration, and inflammation. So not to PMMA. This could have been the same with KERS, with allogenic rings. And the other 10 cases of explantation were related to the position of the ring that was too close to the incision. If you get the ring too close to the incision, you 100%, nearly 100% will get explantation. So altogether, we didn't really have explantation cases that were related to the PMMA material. That's important. So I know that some people will not agree, but in my experience, I'm honest. I'm just really showing the series like it was. So this rate of explantation is about the same as what was already published by you, Efekan, and very different from what we have with Intacs. With Keraring, we have around 1% explantation rate. With Intacs, we have much more, up to 35%. Why is there such a difference? Where it is because of the geometry of the ring, the size of the ring. Intacs and even Intacs SK are much bigger than Keraring, and they also have a different size. So in conclusion, for the first part, this is the largest monocentric cord with Kerarings, demonstrating the effect, the refractive and keratometric effect according to arc length, to thickness, showing that 2 important prognostic factors regarding BCVA may be keratoconus phenotype and the stage. The good prognostic factor include decentered keratoconus and less advanced keratoconus, and bad prognostic factor regarding BCVA include essential keratoconus and advanced keratoconus. And regarding complication, we found around 1% explantation rate. We found that most of the explantation cases were related either to medical complications or to the location of the ring too close to the incision, but not really to PMMA material. This is very different from what we observe from Intacs. So in my opinion, I don't think that Keraring will be replaced by KERS. But again, like Shadi said, there are 2 types of surgeons in the world. The ones that are not doing rings, or that are used to have bad experience with Intacs, and most of these surgeons, nearly all of these surgeons, will go to KERS and be happy with KERS. And the other type of surgeon is the one that are very much used to Keraring or Ferrara, who are very happy, and they are quite resistant to KERS. I mean, I also do KERS. I started recently. I'm happy with KERS. It gives a very good results, but I'm also very happy with Keraring, so I don't really see the necessity of moving to KERS, even though I really think this is very good technique, very interesting technique. But I think that KERS is a new tool. I mean, it's not so new now, but it should be added to what we already have. And the indication of KERS, in my opinion, is that for very advanced keratoconus where PMMA cannot go, because KERS can be implanted more superficially and also on a smaller optical zone. So it can regularize more advanced keratoconus than can PMMA segments. Thank you. I think we should discuss, after the last presentation, Juan Arbales, introducing next generation intracorneal ring segments.
I would like to start thanking Marcelo because he's not only been giving me the opportunity to participate in many research with Mediphacos, in many innovations that he keeps pushing forward, but he also has been my friend and my mentor, and most of the things I know regarding the treatment of keratoconus I have learned from him, so I want to take the opportunity to thank you, Marcelo. So I would like to talk today of a very new, exciting thing that Marcelo has been working, and I had the opportunity to be part of this project, and it's the newest innovation of Mediphacos. And these are biomimetic intrastromal corneal soft segments. These are my disclosures. And I want to start with the philosophy that Marcelo has for the surgical planning of keratoconus. He says that each keratoconus is unique and should be evaluated individually and systematized to define the most appropriate surgical approach. A detailed analysis of multiple tomographic, refractive, visual, and aberrometric variables is essential for a good surgical planning and consequently satisfactory results. So every nomogram has to include all of these factors for us to achieve a good regularization and a good improvement of the vision in our patients. So, intrastromal corneal ring segments implantation is safe and an effective technique, as our colleagues have shown, and they improve visual acuity and they help regularizing irregular corneas. It's been more than 25 years of clinical experience with this technology, and more than 1 million eyes have been implanted globally. More than 500 peer-reviewed papers have been published, and the rings have shown to be safe, efficient, and continue to improve with more refined indication criteria, with better nomograms, with the use of femtosecond laser-assisted techniques for the implantation and the planning and the medical procedure. However, although it's relatively rare, we have complications, as Olivier showed, and still exist, like extrusion in some cases, and complications that range from 1%, and even in some other devices like Intacs that have been reported even up to 30% of extrusion rates with these devices. The emergency of an alternative technique such as ESCRS, the emergence of alternative techniques such as ESCRS aim to overcome the complications and to improve clinical results, as we have seen by Shadi Awad in his nice presentation. And ESCRS is another emerging technique which rely on human tissue for implantation. For the implant preparation, present a new challenges for the widespread adoption, because we need to have prepare these segments or order them and rely on availability of this tissue that in many countries is not available. It has sanitary and transplant regulations that vary and may be difficult and limit the adoption of the technique in many countries. And it has a high cost in some areas that involve not only the tissue, but also the preparation of the tissue. It increased the surgical time significantly when we prepare them ourselves instead of those cases that we can already prepare. And It relies in many cases also in specialized equipment to prepare the tissue when we want to prepare them for example, with a femtosecond laser. For those who are used to implant the tissue manually, so they will be also have additional tools that they might be requiring. It has long-term outcomes that is still not completely known. We don't have as much as experience that we have had already with the PMMA, and we have to wait for the long run to see what's going to happen with these segments. Are they going to continue compressing over a long period of time? Are they the effect is going to be fading after some years? We still don't know. We still have a lot to learn with the KERS. And there are not entirely validated nomograms, although Shadi showed already 3 nomograms and more emerging in the market, but we still have a larger series of cases to have a more robust and validated nomogram. And is not complication-free. We have seen already cases of extrusion, cases of melting, cases of important keratitis in top of the segment, and we also have to be more conservative at the beginning. Even myself, I implanted KERS at 200 microns. Now, as Shadi, I don't go shallower than 300 microns from the implantation of KERS. So the challenge is how could we combine the advantages of intracorneal ring segments and KERS with addressing the limitations of both of these worlds. So over the last 30 years, the intracorneal ring segments technology have evolved based on implant design improvements and variations like optical zones, arc lengths, asymmetric implants, etc. And PMMA has been the only material used in intracorneal ring segment production due to its known biocompatibility. However, its mechanical and chemical properties are substantially different from the corneal stroma. Introducing BICS, that is a biomimetic intrastromal segment, has the advantage that it will be simulating the corneal properties. So we use the word biomimetics. That means bios comes from life and mimesis to imitate. And biomimetics is an innovative design concept that draws inspiration from nature and its elements and processes to solve complex human problems. It's manufactured using a new copolymer, which closely resembles chemical and physical properties of the natural stroma. It has the same water content of the cornea, 78%. It has the same refractive index of the cornea, and it has a soft structure that is similar to the biomechanical properties of the corneal stroma. These are the dimensions of the segments. We currently have them available in 160 degrees and 320 degrees. Because they are soft, also we can cut them, and we can split one 320 into segments of 160, or we can cut the segment in 210 degrees, depending on what we are planning to implant. You see that it has several holes, and you might ask, why are all of these holes? Because it's soft, and we want to have places where we can place our Sinskey hook to slide it in the tunnel. And also, for example, the 320, if we cut it in different lengths, we also want to have these holes close to the distal ends of the segment to be able to pull it and push it in position inside the tunnel. HEMA is a base polymer that is biomimetically engineered and is used for decades, like for example in phakic and pseudophakic IOL implantations. And it has excellent biocompatibility that is being proven for years. We have been implanted lenses, intraocular lenses, for many years, so it's not an entirely new material that we haven't used in the eye. And I want to show and share this very nice comparison that compares what we currently have available with different parameters to evaluate. So we have the X's, which are something that is really not good, and we have 3 pluses for something that is super good. 2 pluses for something that is good, and 1 plus for something that is okay, let's say it. So we start with soft texture. KERS and BIGS share that characteristic. Then we have the water content. Also, KERS and BIGS have the same water content. In refractive index, only KERS and BIGS share the same refractive index of the cornea. Pyramidal profile that will allow us to perhaps avoid the risk of halos and glare also. It's shared with the PMMA rings and BIGS, but not with KERS. Rejection rate, we don't have rejection rate in PMMA. We have some risk of rejection rate because the tissue that we are implanting is not completely free of cells. It has some keratocytes, although it doesn't have epithelium or endothelium and is isolated from the tear film and the aqueous humor. We still have some risk that we have to consider for rejection with KERS, but not with BIGS or PMMA. We have infection risk. In this term, it behaves, let's say, similar than PMMA because the rings come completely sterilized. But KERS, we have to receive this tissue from the eye bank, and everybody of us have done corneal transplants and know that we are exposed to risk of different types of infections. Displacement, perhaps KERS will be integrating better than the other segments, of course, more than PMMA. But since BIGS are more biocompatible, we gave them 2 pluses, so we believe it will integrate better and it will have less chances of displacement like PMMA segments. It can be used in thin corneas. We are conservative. All the case series that I have implanted of BIGS, I have implanted with a shallower 300 microns. And we believe because of its properties and its soft texture will have less chances of extrusion, so we could implant it shallower than PMMA, similar to KERS, but respecting, of course, the limits that we already know. It's really readily available, like PMMA. It's in the shelf. You receive it in a small bottle with BSS, so you don't need to order it from the eye bank. You can have them in your shelf and use them like a PMMA, like Keraring segments, anytime. And it has a consistent thickness and arc length. When I'm preparing KERS, I don't know at the end what thickness I'm implanting. I receive the donor cornea, I use the Susan Jacob Trifine. I might be implanting 700 or 600 or 750. I don't really know what's the thickness that I'm implanting. I put them in a strip in a Teflon block, and then I cut them in the length that I want to have based on the arc length that I want to correct. But it's the human error is still there. I might cut them slightly shorter or slightly longer, but this, like PMMA, you order the size 160, this is what you're going to get. If you order a 300 microns BIGS segment, this is what you're going to get. So it's more consistent in terms of the architecture. It has a consistent post-implantation shape. When we implant PMMA segments, Keraring, we see that the segment has its triangular pyramidal profile with the base parallel to the iris, and it doesn't change the shape within the corneal stroma. And with KERS, when we implant them, if we implant them in tunnels, for example, in any tunnel, the KERS will tend to fill the space of the tunnel. And we can see them at the beginning a little bit more round within the tunnel, and then they start getting this fusiform shape. And this is also something that perhaps will make us lose some effect, and we cannot really control the effect of the segment because it's changing over time. With BIGS, it doesn't happen. Even though it's soft, it remains the pyramidal profile like we have with the PMMA segments, with the difference that the base, because it's not rigid, it will not be parallel to the iris. Now it will be parallel to the endothelium. But the shape remains stable. Over the past, I have been following these patients for 6 months, and it remains with the sections of the OCT without any changes or compression in its architecture.
Nomograms, we have very well-established nomograms with the PMMA segments. With CARES, we are developing some nomograms, but still nothing very well established. And with BICS, we can use already similar nomograms that we can work also with experienced company like Mediphacos to develop a very robust nomograms using all the many years of experience that the company has, not by a personal user, by the global users and the global feedback that they have in the company. And is biocompatible. We know that PMMA has shown biocompatibility, even though it's not the same as corneal stroma, but it has shown good biocompatibility. So we believe that being this material biomimetic will integrate better and it will show even better biocompatibility than PMMA. Of course, CARES, we expect to have the best biocompatibility because it's the same tissue that we are implanting. There is another parameter that I didn't include here. It's how it's the behavior in gain of lines of uncorrected distance visual acuity. So the publications that I've done in intracorneal ring segments, I've shown improved uncorrected lines of uncorrected distance visual acuity of 4.8 lines. With CARES, with my case series of CARES, I have seen around 5.2 lines of uncorrected distance visual acuity. And with the case series of 12 patients that I have implanted with BICS, I have 6.4 lines of uncorrected distance visual acuity. Of course, the numbers are different. Of course, it's involving different types of phenotypes. But in general, the visual effect that I have seen with BICS, it's better than what I have in my experience with PMMA and CARES. If you guys want to have a look of a video of the surgical technique in the BICS itself and the effect in the topography, I have a very nice 6-minute video that you guys can just take a photo, you send me a message, and I'll send you the link for you guys to download that video and see more about the technology, where I'm showing more the effects, how does it look in the OCT, how the topography looks like in some of the cases, and how does it look also implanted already in the eyes with photos of the cornea. Thanks for your attention.
Last 3 presentations. For the different material, PMMA, human tissue, and
biomimetic.
Okay, let's discuss, because there are a lot of questions. I think CARES can be on PMMA, or who started CARES in this group? I know you are the Keraring users, but did you start CARES? Nobody? Only one. Okay, and you, and me. Okay, let's. What do you think about the CARES, PMMA, and the BICS when you compare?
I think about the questions on when to use CARES, and I talked to Sherry about a little over a year ago, and he was explaining me the reasons for CARES, and I think it's very compelling to understand that you can use it in a thinner cornea, you can use it in a more advanced keratoconus, but in Brazil, for example, doing CARES is like doing a transplant. At least the real situation, I have to have the patient on a waiting list for a transplant. I cannot go behind that list for CARES. I cannot get a part of the cornea that I use for DMAC and use for CARES. That's not what we can do in Brazil. So
same in my country.
Yeah, so we
cannot do it.
We have a limitation of CARES like a transplant. And I hope we can change that, actually. And I talked to Susan Jacobs. Susan Jacobs is a great surgeon. She's a friend. She's the next president of the ESCRS. And we have a lot of communication all the time about many things. And she's always talking about CARES. Every time I invite her for a webinar, she's talking about CARES. And I'm listening about CARES for a long time. So I think CARES is a great procedure, but it's not on my loop. So I because I cannot give you a lot of information, but I love to do it. And if I could do CARES, when I would do CARES, exactly as you suggested, in a thinner cornea, more advanced keratoconus. But I've done heroic Keraring with relatively good results with the femtosecond laser. And one of the things I'm saying, we need to do studies to do prognostic evaluation on CARES, rings, when to use the new rings, beautiful, very compelling information for the reasons for changing and the reasons for evolution. So I wish I have an answer, but I have more questions than answers. But I think CARES is going to work if you know how to do it, like rings, Kerarings, plastic rings work when you know how to do it. It's all about planning and executing the procedure in the way it should be done.
We follow the reviews, and we found that CARES and the PMMA rings results are almost similar, right, Shadi? I mean, the decreasing in the K max.
Yeah, I think when you take all constraints the same, all confounding factors, which are basically mild to moderate keratoconus, that's what we saw. We saw almost the same even results on the cornea. So I'm not sure if they work exactly in the same way, but the final output is the same. The final effect on the epithelium, on the stroma remodeling is the same. The Kmax, Kmean changes, stability is the same. Of course, again, if you correct for all confounding factors. And this is something which was good for us. It was good in two ways. The fact that we knew that with the synthetic segments, they're good, so there's no magic in the whole thing. But also the fact that with CARES, with all the imprecision of the nomograms yet, you can still get the same predictability, at least in the cohort we evaluated, as the synthetic segment. So I think it's good for both. And I truly think now it's good. Juan presented some really nice stuff. And I think that's the most important thing. I don't think we need to take sides. I think it's all good for the patient and the evolution of ophthalmology, because I think that's what prompted Mediphacos to innovate. Otherwise, Mediphacos would have said, well, we're doing fine. There's no competitor. Let's keep doing the same. They work. Why should we search for a solution if what we're doing is working? But the fact there's another potential made Mediphacos think, okay, well, let's see, because also CARES is not without some issues like, already Renato said about corneas, about sourcing corneas, about finding other things, about possible nomogram and stuff. If we can build on something already there, I mean, time will tell, hopefully, that what is there, because we need time, just like CARES needs some time to see about the biocompatibility, but I think that's great. And when Juan showed me the results a couple of months ago, I was really impressed. So I think all of them, and maybe the patients would benefit, maybe for each one would be, I mean, we have, the larger the armamentarium, the better. This is when SMILE came around and KLAX. It's good because we are still doing LASIK, we are still doing KLAX, we are still doing trans-PRK, but we can serve our patient even better.
Okay, the effect is almost this one.
I want to add on that question that you have and what the Shadi say. I think it will be a place for the three of them. I don't believe one technology will replace completely the other technologies. For example, now in my experience that I have had with almost more than 1,000 cases implanted with the Kerarings, with almost 100 CARES that I implanted, and 12 cases that I have implanted with the BIGs, I can see that in the CARES and in the BIGs, the behavior, it's similarly. There is more of a coupling effect, what you see with the implantation of these segments, and with the plastic segments, there is more of a, of course there is coupling effect, but also arc shortening effect that we don't have with the soft segments. So right now what I'm doing, the very advanced keratoconus, very, very advanced keratoconus, I'm using CARES. And cases that I want more arc shortening effect, I use Kerarings still. But for the rest of the cases that I was using Kerarings, the normal cases, where I would be using CARES, I think BIGS, in my opinion, is the best alternative. We have not only those complications that I have experienced with CARES, but I have had also some other issues with CARES, like tissue transparency. So I don't know if Shadi has shared the same experience, but I have some cases where the CARES look whitish, even from day one of implantation. I thought I was trephining in corneas that have Arcus, and I was complaining with the eye bank, your guys sending me corneas with Arcus, and I'm requesting clear cornea for 9 millimeters, what's happening? And then I just saw that the corneas were completely transparent, but for some reason they were getting a little bit whitish. Then I thought because the tunnels were tight, but then I compared the same tunnels that were tight with other tunnels where they have the same dimensions, and until now I cannot really know. Maybe you can tell. So I think at some point we will still have all the alternatives, and there will be indications for each of them. But in my opinion, BICS will replace a huge number of the previous two groups because it addresses a lot of the limitations of these two other options and gets the best of these other two worlds, gets the best of it by addressing some of the limitations. So I think it's the way to go, and I think Mediphacos and Marcelo took a very good decision in innovating in this area.
I am very experienced with PMMA and a beginner with KERAS. I did about 40 eyes with KERAS. And my main limitation with KERAS, it has to do with also in France it's a graft. The cost, it's about 2,000 euros or 3,000 euros for one graft and all the anterior chamber, etc. I have discussed with Susan Jacob, it's like 50 euros in India. So the cost is a big limitation factor. So I tried to make several CARES. I used the Alain Saad technique that he published to cut 8 CARES with a single graft. So this reduces the cost, but that means that all the CARES, they have the same thickness, 400 microns. And what I like in PMMA, I mean in Keraring, is that I'm very used to it. When I see the topography, the refraction, I can choose the right ring, the thickness. I can choose 200 microns or 250 microns or 300. I can modulate very easily. And I cannot do this with CARES, because that means that, of course, I can cut a CARES that's smaller, but that means that all the CARES that I'm cutting with the same graft will have to have the same thickness. So it's complicated to organize the operating room, to organize all the patients the same day with the same graft. I mean, it's very complicated. Maybe this new technique, like artificial CARES, kind of, may reduce the cost, may make it easier, the flexibility to choose the right device for the. I think I have no idea because I never tried it, but I suppose can have some hope in this. Because I think really CARES is very interesting. I have the feeling that CARES might be better than PMMA for best corrected visual acuity. It's only an impression. I have the feeling that the few patients that I have done with CARES maybe do a little bit better. I showed you that the PMMA, they only gain 1 line altogether. It's not very much. I have the feeling that with CARES they might gain a little bit more, but I'm waiting because I'm waiting to have enough data to compare with to see if it's significant or not. But that's my feeling. I really think CARES is interesting, but all these limitations.
Okay, the effects is almost the same. What about the complications?
So
I mean,
just
what you
answer,
told me after CARES, you got some cases with the extrusions or melting. You told me.
If I can, just to, if you allow me, just to answer 2 things raised by Juan and Olivier. So basically, the transparency is just that one that we're getting really, and on purpose, crappy corneas because we're getting very cheap corneas. Okay, we're paying like $250 for a cornea.
Yeah, 200.
And these corneas are actually have arcus, even though you don't see it on the on the microscope. Put it on the slit lamp before you would see. They give us the worst cornea, and we're okay with that, but that's the problem sometimes of trephining at the periphery. If I do it with a femtosecond laser, where I know where I'm doing and I stay away from the periphery. The problem with Susan Jacobs Trifine, it limits you to the periphery.
Yeah.
I have pristine cornea, just like the one I showed. So I think transparency, it's really very good if you use femtosecond at least, or if you use the Trifine and without the Arcus. So I believe it's Arcus. Olivier, I just want to tell you that CARES is a developing technology, and right now, we're getting a lot of great cornea that are pre-treated, especially by the Lions Eye Bank. I mean,
I contact them, but in France, it's impossible to get these cornea.
Right. I know. But I'm saying that you're talking from the point of view of a surgeon who's cutting them. I cut them, again, because I want to keep driving the technology. It's different. But for the average surgeon, they're going to be getting them through those banks. And those banks, with time, are going to be more efficient, and the price will drop. So I think we're going to think about the technology over the next 1 or 2 or 3 years. We should not think right now, because right now you're pioneering. You're still in the pioneer part, but you should think, just like the segment started, you should think of the next 1 or 2 years, it's going to be much more accessible for everybody. But I think, hopefully, we'll see. With biomimetics, that's good. If this is a good, if the technology will be there, by then we have many options for our patients. Now, to answer what you
about
asked.
Complications.
So I have basically had 3 patients who melted. But again, this is part of the learning curve. We published 2 already. We're sending the 3rd one. The first one, it's very interesting, is actually a patient with severe atopy. That was sent to me by a surgeon who does Keraring because he believed it's not good for a Keraring. I do CARES, see her. The patient is by, I'm not going to say, but somebody very high, the daughter of somebody very high in Turkey, and very diplomatically. And I controlled her atopy as much as I can, but they were traveling back to Turkey. They pushed me. We controlled everything, and we thought she's fine. We inserted the CARES, only to discover that actually they did not tell us that she is on IgE therapy, and she has so many things, and they didn't discuss it to us because she was referred from a different surgeon, and she melted, okay? After 3 months, she came back not knowing. She came back with a severe atopy everywhere. She went for a regular exam, only to discover she melted. Interestingly, we did not remove the CARES. The patient melted in a very small sector. She lost some CDVA, but she was still much better than what she started. We controlled her with steroid and cyclosporin and everything, and then she's now almost 2 years stable. The second one was
you didn't remove it.
I didn't remove it. The second one was an intax that caused melt. So I removed it and put a CARES. By the way, I published a series in GRS where we removed intax and Keraring, and we left them by itself, and then another series where we exchanged with CARES, and we showed that the exchange with CARES with suturing the first 2 months to hold the CARES in place gave much better results because there's no regression. That was an interesting publication. So at the time, we did the same. We just inserted it, but the patient had a very early melt. We didn't need to suture. It was perfect. The patient did very well. Visual acuity was actually still better than before, only to come 3 months later with a melt at another point. So, which means that the patient had probably a pre-existing inflammation that we didn't see, and that continued in another location over the same, I implanted the same tunnel, so I had to remove it. So that's another one. The third one was just a humongous CARES to treat a very advanced keratoconus. At the time, again, I was putting them very shallow, so I put a very thick segment at 250 depth. The patient improved a lot, very happy. 8 months later, came back with a very small melt. Patient had only blepharitis. We controlled everything. We followed. The patient is now 1 year post that melt. We didn't have to remove it. We just have a very thinner stroma at that side. We detected by OCT, so we didn't remove. So what I'm saying, it's not impossible, okay? And it's early in our learning curve, we were very aggressive, putting it at 250. And honestly, when I looked at Istanbul nomogram at 200, first, I remember I told you, I said, these guys are gonna change. And now they started saying 250. And I'm pretty sure over the next probably maybe a year, we might be a little bit more conservative and maybe go to 300. But overall, we've done a lot everywhere, and we've seen some melts. But again, the technology will mature. We will know our limits, and ultimately we will probably settle to a certain sizes and everything. So it is a maturing technology, like you said.
In PMMA, if you have a melt or extrusion, you cannot wait. You have to remove it because it cannot heal anymore.
Yeah, this is different.
I think in all surgery, the rules are very important. Let's look in condylopulos, 35%, they have complications. When I spoke with the Greek group or German or Swiss group. They didn't want to implant the rings. And I said, why? Because they said in 21 cases, they have 7 extrusions. It's impossible. I mean, we've done like 3,000 cases, 5,000 cases, and we don't have this complications rate. Because at the beginning, you are right, absolutely right, we don't know the rules. So we will learn, but it's a good thing now we are learning after the cares, even the melting extrusions, we don't have to remove it. But when I heard the cares, I was happy. I said, okay, now I will not have extrusions anymore. I will not have melting anymore. Because when I make the incision far from my ring, not move the ring, just make the incision 30 degrees far, it stopped the extrusions in the incision part. But after that, when I started topo-guided treatment on the ring segments, again extrusion meltings came. So I was happy after cares. Maybe I will not have any melting or extrusions. You want to say something?
Chadi, are these cases that are presenting melt, do you consider a real rejection?
Excellent question. These patients with MELS do have 0 infiltrates. It's very quiet, nothing else. And we have looked at all our series. We looked at also OCT because the infiltrates are easily seen on OCT. We checked. We don't have any rejection till now. Susan Jacob described one patient with rejection, which she treated with steroids, and within 2 months stopped everything. It's fine. I think the only real rejection was Alain Saad, who put one ring and then somehow he wanted better effect, put another case. So put one case from one donor, another case from another donor. And I'm not sure if the manipulation from a second surgery caused some rejection, some infiltrates, and he removed them. So that's actually the only case where we see that a rejection with a potential removal. So I really believe that rejection is not an issue. It's possible, theoretically. But as was discussed, I think it's 7% technically of the stromal tissue, 7%. No endothelium, no epithelium, shielded from the aqueous, shielded from the tear film. So I think the issue of rejection, while possible, is practically not there.
Okay. And a brief comment. The corneal gene group who produce
CTAC, yes.
CTAC, the corneal tissue addition technology, keratoplasty, they address that. They treat the corneas already cut with gamma irradiation.
All of them do. All of the Lions eye bag, all of them do.
And with this process, they mentioned that it will deplete, they will remove all the keratocytes, which maybe is the origin of the possible rejection in this particular patients.
So, I'm just going back to the history, because to understand the future, we need to look back to the past. And this is a sentence we can use for every kind of analysis. For those of you who remember the laws of Barraquer, of José Ignacio Barraquer, in the times of the keratophakia procedures, one of the laws says that you should not implant a tissue that is thicker than 50% of the zone of the cornea where you are implanting this tissue. This is one of the rules. Second, and Renato knows this very well, when we look at problems, for instance, with deep flaps, dry eye after laser, we'll go back to the textbooks and we see where are the major nerve plexus of the cornea. They are on the anterior stroma and on the mid stroma. And damaging these nerves causes a lot of neurotrophic issues in refractive patients. And so this is the explanation why Intacs, for those of you who have implanted Intacs, the thickness of the Intacs were never below 400 microns. And as my colleague just elegantly showed, it's very difficult today that we implant a Keraring or a Ferrari ring thicker than 300. So most of the implants are 200 and 250. With the advent of the femtosecond laser and our normal learning curves, even with manual surgery, it's very hard to get a shallow tunnel, especially with femtosecond laser. So what I'm trying to explain is, first, how many of you have extrusions having the implant correctly implanted and respecting the thickness in the cornea? How many? Very few. We stop seeing with Mediphacos, with Kerarings, we never see the whitish deposits in the cornea. We don't see nail vessels. Why? Because as the ring is deep and the thickness is not too high, we respect the metabolism of the keratocytes and we don't strain the collagen fibers. So we are respecting the anatomy of the cornea. So I completely agree, and in refractive surgery, universally thinking, the way to evolve things is not to put in conflict techniques. And we saw that in the past, cross-linking and rings and cross-linking. So it's not whether one is better than the other. We have to use all the weapons we have, and I think that KERS is going to be a very strong weapon for stage 3 and stage 4, especially when we don't want to do keratoplasty procedures. And of course, it will have to take time for the nomograms, for the predictability. So if I ask Shadi, please tell me how the thickness of a care could depending on the type of the cornea you receive, on the hydration when you cut. So these are things that you will probably evolve with time. Probably we will be able to be accurate on the thickness of the ring that we can cut. So I think that in the next 10 years, KERS will reduce even further the number of keratoplasties, but not replacing PMMA rings, because I think we are kind of misleading here the nomogram. So for me, it's very clear. Stage 1, stage 2, very predictability with PMMAs. We have 20 years of nomogram evolution. I think KERS can be the same. I don't think it can be better. Stage 3, stage 4, I think there's a clear role for any kind of allogenic or the new tissues, because those are the ones that we struggle more, we have more complications, and we have less visual recovery. So the idea here as a group is to build a nomogram integrating all the weapons that we can and not leaving anyone outside.
Okay. Please.
Thank you. My name is Frederico Bicalho from Brazil, from Belo Horizonte, the factory of Mediphacos. I want to ask about KERS, if the KERS can make astigmatism correction, because we talk that the ring needs the power of the extremities of the segments to make the astigmatism correction. For me, this is very important because KERS is different from the PMMA segment, because if KERS can't correct the astigmatism, so in almost all of the patients with keratoconus needs the astigmatism correction. And the question is, what the experience of you about the astigmatism correction using KERS?
The answer is at least as good, at least. So what I mean is, if I want to go for a Keraring or an Intax arc length of 130, with the KERS, it's 160. I don't know why, don't ask me, but when I do subtraction topography, and that's, by the way, a new publication focusing only on astigmatism, I can't explain it yet. So what I show, when you see that they're equal when we put everything together with a complete different nomograms. So they're equal, but you don't need to shorten the axial length that much. When I started going first with very short axial length, I had flipped astigmatism and really bad results because patients were unhappy having fixed, they've been used to kind of, their brain was used always to modulate a certain axis. I don't know how, you wouldn't think how a soft tissue can do that, but remember that at least myself, I use not very wide tunnels because I use the dehydration technique. My tunnels are just enough, not too tight, but not too much. So actually the segments kind of compress and it doesn't take much of the spindle shape because the tunnel. So I cannot explain it yet, but I can tell you definitely no worries about astigmatism. It does control it very well.
Result immediate?
Yes. Actually, The same. Actually, the first time they come, the results over. But if I wait about a week or two, the results will improve. The case thickness improved by OCT. It actually thins a little bit over time. Not much, but we followed up to 6 months. There is a small, and I asked at the time Cynthia Roberts, and we looked at OCTs, and then she told me that's probably biomechanical integration. That's why even my segments, which are tight, they start first like cylindrical and then slowly get the spindle shape. And yeah, I think we talked about that one before. And that's actually because the biomechanical integration.
I have seen in my experience that the effect of both have correction of astigmatism, as Shadi say, almost equally. But the way that they are correcting the astigmatism is slightly different. As I say before, I have seen in the soft segments like KERS and the bigs more of a coupling effect that helps for the correction of astigmatism, also with some arc shortening effect, but not as much as arc shortening effect that we see with the rigid PMMA segments like Kerarings. But in both we have correction of astigmatism, not only topographically, also in the refraction. I don't know if you have the same experience by seeing the topographies. That we see it. There is more of a coupling effect that is produced in the soft segments that instead of all these arc shortening that we have in the rigid segments.
Okay. I would like to thank all of you for your attention and for coming here for this meeting. And I would like to thank Mediphacos company to give us this opportunity. From each meeting we are learning another things. And the next meeting we will be here again. Thank you very much, Marcelo. And thank you.